Do our conversations about crypto have you wanting to do more with your career? Check out Fidelity, which has been exploring Bitcoin and blockchain since 2014. They were the first traditional asset manager to launch a native crypto business and also among the first to launch a Bitcoin exchange-traded product. So why consider Fidelity? Because they invest in their talent with continuing education programs and they invest in their technology, ensuring associates are working with the latest and greatest so that their crypto teams can continue to improve and evolve their product, staying ahead of the rapidly changing digital asset landscape. With Fidelity's iterative, scalable approach, built to meet today's increasing demands across the digital space and a commitment to developing innovative tools, there's never been a more interesting time to work in crypto and DeFi at Fidelity. Explore Fidelity Crypto Careers today. Go to crypto.fidelitycareers.com to learn more. That's crypto.fidelitycareers.com. Fidelity is an equal opportunity employer. And now it is on with the show. My guest today is Toby Gilbert. Toby is the co-founder at PACT Swap, which is a cross-chain DEX. It's built on Coinweb. We'll learn much more about this today. Welcome to the show, Toby.
Thank you very much for having me here.
It is a pleasure, Toby. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It'd be super cool if you could introduce yourself, really. Be cool to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. Yeah, what have you been doing in the lead up to co-founding PACT Swap?
Sure. I mean, I've been building companies for 20 years, and predominantly I was for 15 years in telecoms. Around about 2017, I was with one of my co-founders in a telco who's a deep tech, and he started explaining to me all about blockchain, and he dragged me down this rabbit hole that I haven't seemed to have got out of. I don't know, going on 8 years later. So we started by building Coinweb. Definitely an idea that was too early for its time. He was very much focused on problems that had not yet occurred in blockchain, and he was hell-bent to solve those problems. And in his mind, without solving those problems, then the whole industry couldn't scale. So we built a proprietary cross-computation platform so they could cross-chain roll-up. Then on top of that, we built a payment platform, which is now a digital bank. And then latterly, and most recently, we have built a unique cross-chain DEX that is supporting native Bitcoin amongst a whole load of other pairs.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, and so PACT Swap. So that's basically the idea, is to be, a super capital efficient cross-chain DEX, and the trustless trading of native Bitcoin is quite a point of difference, Toby.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, our kind of whole industry in the decentralized space is controlled by centralized players like gatekeepers. And those are centralized exchanges. And we've seen many problems that have come to bear with them being our gatekeepers. There's always going to be a gatekeeper role in a regulated space where fiat money is effectively coming in and out of digital assets. But when it comes down to the swapping of digital assets, this is still very much in the control of these centralized entities. And there's one core reason for that, and that's price point. And everything that you see in the DEX space has been kind of complicated to use. It's been expensive. And those are the pain points that we're trying to solve here so that we can take ownership and control of the decentralized space back to decentralized players.
Well, that's a good point, Toby. It'd be useful to understand, who do you see as, I guess, the different buckets or the different groups of, the target market of different users that you would hope would use PACT Swap. So are we talking crypto natives? Do you want to do you want to appeal to people that have some Bitcoin, of course? How would you kind of frame that?
I think it's important just to start a little bit more upstream and point out that DEX is today, due to the skill and the experience connecting wallet and so on and so forth, wallets needs to what that requires. And so DEXs have been pretty much there for crypto native users, but in an overreaching way, they've also been there just for crypto users that want to remain in the decentralized space, who are willing to pay more for the swapping of those assets. So yes, you get the simplicity of a UI that a centralized exchange will bring, but at the same point you get a much lower price point. So if you have traditional businesses, for example, they want to be able to accept a myriad of different currencies, including Bitcoin, but they don't want to have any exposure to the fluctuation of those underlying currencies. They're not willing to accept the price point that DEXs currently present. Just give you an idea, there are 3 cross-chain DEXs, protocols, and their respective DEXs that support native Bitcoin today, and that's my protocol, Chainflip, and TORChain. And on average, to take Bitcoin into native Ethereum or USDT, you're paying in excess of 2%. Whereas a newbie retail customer hitting Binance is paying anywhere between 30 bips and 50 bips. So the market that DEX is currently presenting themselves to at the moment are limiting themselves, not only on UI, but because on the cost base. So most DEXs are saying, hey, we're going after crypto natives. Yes, we are going after crypto natives, but we're also going after traditional real world businesses that want to start accepting crypto payments, and they want to start doing it at the right price point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Toby. And because if you go to if you look at the PactSwap app, the UI, I guess, as you've alluded to, it is really nice and simple to use. So you're hiding some of the complexity of cross-chain swaps in the background, and perhaps that's essentially what users are paying for when they use DEXs, right?
No, absolutely. But what also is there, but in a lot more of the API documents, and we have like payment companies that we're working with now, they can actually take the API documents, abstract even more of that away, and all of a sudden, because we're fully composable, meaning you can build on top of us. Merchants or traditional business or Web3 gaming and so on and so forth can embed this DEX within their payment pages, and they can start transacting. And to give you an idea, if you've got native Bitcoin and you're putting it into, as I said, once again, native Ethereum, or USDT on several different networks, this is chiming in around 30 to 40 basis points. So the price point is now comparable to centralized exchanges. We make it super easy for, projects, businesses, so on and so forth, to be able to use the technology behind their curtain, behind their hood. And it just looks like a simple payment page for users to easily interact with.
Yeah, very much so. Interesting team that you've got working with you, Toby, as well. Brock Pierce, of course, famously of Block One, Blockchain Capital, and Scott Walker as well. So just what's it like working with the team?
I mean, Brock is an absolute genius. He was one of the co-founders at Tether, EOS, and a number of other tokens, a number of exchanges that he helped out and worked with in the first instance while they were getting off the ground, including Binance. So to kind of bring that experience of him being in the business, for over a decade, there are a lot of landmines that are scattered around. And, we've been in the space since the end of 2017, so we get to see some of those landmines. And he just brings a wealth, as does Scott, of experience to bear, where we can avoid some of those landmines, look at innovating in an intelligent way. You've got to tread a fine line if you're delivering a DEX that has the power of what we have at this price point, because it's a natural attack vector from regulators. Whilst there are definitely safeguards that are in place, when we have market makers connect to us, they have to check, the wallets that are doing the transactions aren't coming from bad actors, North Korea and all these sorts of places. But fundamentally, there is no KYC that is being run on a token-to-token transaction. So there's a very fine line to tread here, where you're safeguarding, you're not, allowing the platform to take dirty funds and so on and so forth. And so we've been following this, and these guys have been instrumental in guiding us on that. And there's a key example that we've been keeping a very close eye on, which is Uniswap. In January of this year, they received a Wells notice from the SEC in the United States, and they presented this as the decentralized part of our platform. This is how it works. Here's the centralized part of our platform in terms of foundation, labs, and so on and so forth that we control. And that Wells notice was withdrawn by the SEC. And it's that sort of advice. And I'm just giving the high level, but if you get into the granular detail of it, we want to not become victims of our own success. We want to have a scalable platform that can bring volume and not run into or minimize the regulatory headaches that we're going to run into. We're intent on treading that path. And these co-founders that we have, they're instrumental in making sure we tread that fine line.
Yes, very, very well said. Thank you, Toby. Look, you said at the beginning, you see DEXs as very important in terms of presenting an alternative, I suppose, instead of, a centralized exchange. So they're much more, censorship resistant, give people different options. Just dig into that a little bit. Why is that important? Toby, that people have that choice?
I think what we've seen, time and time again, that there's been a lack of a regulatory framework around centralized exchanges. And as a result of that, a number of relatively inexperienced people that don't come from the real world, in the majority part, not always, are left to kind of self-regulate. And we've seen that go wrong, like horribly, horribly wrong. FTX being the most obvious one amongst a number of other issues. As the exchanges become more, the regulatory spotlight gets shone on them more, especially as they're handling fiat at the same time, then they begin to act more and more like traditional high street banks. And I must feel no less than 5-10 calls a week from friends, family, retail people that we're connected with say, hey, we have funds stuck on an exchange, or we don't understand. They're asking for counterparties and travel rules and MiCA and so on and so forth, which makes it more and more difficult to be able to transact with them. And I think that in some part, that's for good reason. There have to be safeguards, there have to be safety rails to anything that is touching assets. But I come originally from London, from the UK, and in a rather similar way, there's just the news is filled full of individuals and small businesses that are having their bank accounts frozen or closed down because banks are throwing AI at it. They have to be able to present a mean average of suspicious activity reports, and their knee-jerk reaction to the regulators is, hey, we've gone and closed this month 3,000 accounts. And then a mum and pop store in the middle of nowhere that's relying on their Royal Bank of Scotland bank account has just gone out of business that they've been running for 30 years. And you're seeing kind of a similar approach being taken by the centralized exchanges, and all of this kind of threatens the industry whilst it's in a nascent form of bringing liquidity in and out. I think there has to be regulation, and it's a balancing act. You've got to get the right amount of regulation so it doesn't strangle the industry to the point where it stifles innovation, and that's what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah, very well said, Toby. It actually reminds me of an experience I had not too long ago with an older friend of mine, shall we say, who was just trying to buy a little bit of Bitcoin for the first time. And as soon as he tried to do that, his bank were on the phone to him straight away saying, excuse me, sir, do you know that you've just spent this amount of money on a cryptocurrency? Do you know what you're up to? And then rest, they, you know how this works. They have a big sheet of things that they have to go through just before you can even, get your own money approved from your own bank. So it's a tiresome process. What about, speaking of Bitcoin, you've talked, Toby, about this idea of unlocking native Bitcoin liquidity at scale. You know, and I believe without the need for wrapped tokens or bridges. So look, you don't need to get super technical, but yeah, explain a little bit about what that means, what you're trying to do here.
I think there are two parts in this. I think there's the part of unlocking liquidity, and I think there's another part here of usability. So in the unlocking liquidity side, a huge amount of capital is locked up in Bitcoin, $2 billion plus, allowing that Bitcoin to easily move across different blockchains. Blockchains are entirely incompatible with one another. So you've got a blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, and you have the Ethereum blockchain. They're different operating systems, so they don't talk to each other. And that includes the assets that live on those different blockchains. Excuse me. So to try and swap those assets between those different chains has been really, really difficult in the decentralized space. It's easy if you're in a centralized space because it's a black box. It's all done on a ledger basis. You know, they're not actually moving the assets. It's okay. Party A wants to take 1 Bitcoin and buy 25 Ethereum over on to party B, and then they just move it on a ledger on a spreadsheet. So that's why it's so simple. But if you're actually trying to take two assets that are entirely incompatible with one another and swap them in a decentralized space, then that becomes exceptionally difficult because the assets are not compatible with one another. And that limits the flow of the assets between the different chains. And as a result, that affects liquidity, and that then moves into usability. So let's come up with an example, a real world example. You're on a Web3 gaming site. You know, you have a party like Animoca Brands that has gone and invested billions and billions of dollars into Web3 gaming, and they're trying to break through and get some sort of traction for a Web3 game that they've funded. And all of a sudden, the token of the Web3 game has been issued on Solana. Now you've got a whole load of Bitcoin native people. They're just holding Bitcoin. They want to try and play this game. So all of a sudden, they're holding Bitcoin in one type of wallet, and then they have to then go to an exchange, convert it into Solana on their exchange wallet, and then they need to transfer that into the gaming wallet, the Solana, and then swap it for the gaming token. Well, I tell you what, you've lost 99% of people at this point in time. This is a whole undertaking that people are trying to go through. As a result, you get all of these wonderful innovations, and that doesn't just need to be Web3 gaming. That can be a whole myriad of different Web3 projects that are finding it really, really difficult to get retail customers to come in because they have to jump through all these hoops. Now, the way in which we solve that very simply is they could take an iframe of what our platform is, embed it on their site, and someone simply, as long as we support the underlying chain on the other side, they can take Bitcoin and immediately not only swap it into the Solana, but with permissionless listings, that Web3 game can actually list their Solana token or Ethereum token directly on the DEX. And behind an iframe, someone has taken Bitcoin and they've simply taken it into their token on the DApp that they are directly trying to get the deposit from. And we just cut out all these different intermediary stages, meaning that now you can bring in retail user bases much more easily, and you've lowered the barrier to entry, simply put.
I love it. Look, makes sense when you put it like that, Toby. Look, let's zoom ahead a bit then. So, you know, what would, you know, I don't know, pick your time frame, 3 years, 5 years. What does a fully accessible, low-fee, multi-chain DEX ecosystem, you know, PACT Swap, what does that look like in 5 years' time? And I guess what does the landscape look like versus, you know, different sexes and dexes, and where do you sit?
Well, look, I think we've got 3 competitor bases, and it's the best way to look at it like that. Number one, the niche outlier cases of TORChain, Maya Protocol, and Chainflip. They're handling $200 million a day on average of traffic between their supported DEXs on those protocols. Then you get to single chain DEXs, and just to be clear, on the first 3, we're up to 95% cheaper than them. The next competitor cohort is single chain DEXs, the best being known of Uniswap, and we're up to 45% cheaper than them. and they are handling $7 or $8 billion a day worth of trade. And you go, right, okay, well, stands to reason at the price points. And if we have enough liquidity, then we can go after a percentage of that customer base. Then we move on to centralized exchanges. Binance are looking at $100 billion a day of trade just on their own. Okay, fine. They're 60% of the market. But we can now start chipping in to that as well. So conservatively speaking, in the next 2 to 3 years, I'd be highly disappointed if we're not doing $1 billion a day worth of trade on the.
I love it. Got to be ambitious. All right. Well, feels like a nice place to tell people, I guess, Toby, as we finish up this part of the podcast, for people that want to have a play around with PactSwap and learn all about what is available, what they can do. What is the best place for them to go and do exactly that, Toby?
Please go to our URL, www.pactswap, PACTSWAP.io. And go to our socials. All the links are there. We've got Discord, X, Telegram. Join them. Follow the narrative. It's not always a smooth journey. It's not meant to be. That's why we're getting the community in to test, give critical feedback. We really encourage people to post their critical feedback. We want to hear about it. Whilst we're all sitting here think it's the best thing since sliced bread, the more eyes that we can have on this, we will react quickly. We're making changes. And we want that. And we want to be transparent about that. This is going to be a community-driven product. And we want that community to be our first users.
I love it. Very well said, Toby. All right, well, it's time to start to finish up the show. And we do that, of course, Toby, by running you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Sure.
All right, Toby, I'm just going to run some questions at you, and I just want you to give me your honest answers, hot take style, if you like, is how we do it. So question 1 for you, Toby, very simply is, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I think they're both wedded together. I think the Bitcoin maxis will benefit greatly from the flow of liquidity between the chains. I think Bitcoin is the cornerstone of our industry. And I think it's not going to be a one-way ticket, but over time, there is going to be more and more, hopefully, retail coming into this, opposed to what we've seen recently, where you've got institutional coming in with ETFs, etc. And I think Bitcoin is going to do exceptionally well.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you, Toby, my bad. Toby, next question for you is, what would you say is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
Crypto is now here to stay. I've been through 3 bear markets to date. I've seen many, many different significant parties from the real world say it's over, it was a fad. I think we can safely say, leaving to one side the elephant in the room being quantum computing, that crypto has now proved itself through several cycles. Usability is increasing, is being taken as a very serious asset class, even by Wall Street and governments all around the world with their reserves. Crypto is here to stay.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, look, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So, with that in mind, I guess, PactSwap, what does it look like in 10 years' time, Toby?
I would like to think that we can become one of the dominant players in the market that has disrupted the space, moving away and counterbalancing centralized exchanges, and ushering in and guiding the way on a new technology that makes it easy and more accessible to be utilized in the decentralized space by millions and millions of people, especially as retail begins to flow in.
All right, another way of thinking about the future, of course, is it's a wonderful quote by William Gibson, who famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So with that in mind, Toby, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Within our space, I think that you're seeing many, many payment platforms that people are using every day that is actually touching blockchain technology without people being aware. I admit many maybe pilot programs, but people are unaware of this happening. And as they move to pilot to production, and many are also in production, I think that blockchain is going to become like the internet. And I have something really funny to say. I was at school 1995 or 96, and a very close friend of mine that now heads up a 90 billion euro fund. It's the largest technology fund in Europe. He called me, and he was at another school, and he said, "You've got to check out this thing called the internet." And I was like, "What are you even talking about? This is rubbish." And lo and behold, where we find ourselves, 30 years later, and now the future was there then. He saw it coming. Took me a few years to cotton on. And I think that's exactly where we're at with blockchain right now.
Yeah, very much agree. And look, it brings us nicely to the final question, which is very simply, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or a TV show?
Well, you're catching me there. I kind of like real dystopian ones that involve zombies that my other half hates me for. I don't know. 28 Days Later. If you could call that a science fiction, I'm not sure you could, but it's dystopian enough to maybe tick the box.
Yeah, we'll take it. Anything involving zombies. Always a good time, Toby. Look, speaking of good times, this was a good time. Thank you so much for coming on the show and spending some time with us today. Again, just to take it out, please do tell people where they can go to stay up to date with everything you and the team are building at PACT Swap.
PACT Swap, PACTSWAP.io.
Simple as that, folks. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Toby. All the best, and bye for now.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers. Bye-bye.